Boruto's fight with Shikadai is an intense battle between two best friends. But the best thing about this episode, in my humble opinion, is Chocho versus Shinki. Greetings, my friends. Before we begin this review, here's a spoiler warning for both this episode of Boruto Naruto Next Generations, as well as for the Boruto movie. If you haven't seen either of these things, go check them out now before watching this review. This episode was awesome. Easily, I think, my favorite episode of this tuning exam thus far, and that's because we're finally starting to see some big differences from the movie version. They're actually expanding on some fights and giving us some things that we never even had an opportunity to see. In the Boruto movie, Chocho lost to Shinki. However, we never saw that battle play out. In fact, Chocho was sort of comically defeated in the movie version, to the point where, honestly, you couldn't take her character all that seriously. In the Boruto anime series, however, Chocho has been, without a doubt, one of the best things about the entire series. Not only have they delved into an incredibly fun personality, but we've actually got to see her get honest-to-goodness development. And her battle with Shinki in this episode is all sorts of awesome, and easily my favorite thing about this episode, as it's not just a complete pushover battle. Yes, Shinki has complete command of the entire fight the entire time, but there is a moment where he actually starts to get excited over the prospect of fighting against the ninja who's actually pushing him back. And that's what Chocho does in this episode right here. But really, this is a very simple episode of Boruto. Two big major battles. Chocho versus Shinki, Boruto versus Shikadai. The Boruto versus Shikadai stuff plays out almost exactly like the movie version, with a few minor differences and some choices that I think are honestly going to work a lot better in this arc right here, especially considering that the next major part of this arc should have actually started at the end of this episode, but no, believe it or not, we're actually going to get more fights, and one of them has got to be one of the hypest things that I've ever seen from the series. In the next episode, we're going to see Shinki of the Sand battle against Mitsuki. I could make an entire video just about that, but let's get back on track here. Boruto versus Shikadai plays out exactly like the films, with both of the characters using their signature abilities. Shikadai using his shadow-styled techniques, as well as Boruto using his clones and his shuriken. However, Shikadai has been doing some extreme training and is able to utilize a technique where he's basically able to turn his shadow into a massive circle. So if you even get close to him, you're automatically going to end up getting caught by these shadows. But Boruto, of course, reluctantly has to use the ninja technology, and at first they almost make it seem like he's not going to do that at all. They seem like they're going to go down a completely different route, but no, he uses them to create more clones to end up trapping Shikadai and winning the match. In the movie version, this is when both Hinata and Naruto immediately realized that he was cheating, and they actually called him out on this fact. Boruto gets away with it scot-free in this episode, and while he doesn't, say it out loud, you can tell that on the inside he's a little disappointed at what he did, because not only did he just cheat, but he cheated against his best friend in the entire world. He didn't give him an honest-to-goodness match, and that's a shame because a lot of the things in this fight are really awesome. I especially love the way that Boruto actually uses his clones, very similar to Naruto, where they manage to support each other not only in the fighting, but just how they maneuver around the battlefield, jumping off of each other, throwing each other around. It's all slick and really solid. Doesn't look as good as the movie, but it honestly does come really close. I love it a lot. I especially love the dime store symbolism we get at the end of the episode. It's something that the Naruto franchise has always been known for, but I love how at the very end you had the other members of Ino Shikacho who were consoling Shikadai. Every single member of their team lost. They're going to go out and celebrate with some barbecue, of course, because Mogi is going to end up paying for all of it. But what I really love is the symbolism of Shikamaru walking up the stairs and heading towards the light, and Boruto walking downstairs and heading into the darkness. It's just a little metaphor to show where these two characters are currently going in terms of what their actual growth is, and honestly, it worked. It was a pretty solid battle, and I loved it. The scene of Chocho and Inojin trying to console Shikadai, honestly felt really heartwarming. And it also felt like I was watching the original Naruto series again. I really got swept up in this one. It truly felt like the original Chunin exam arc, especially with Chocho versus Shinki, which to me was awesome, because one, we actually got to see the fight, and it was surprisingly fun. Of course, Chocho didn't bring out any crazy style techniques, aside from using the body expansion jutsu and eventually using the human boulder technique at the end of the episode, the signature technique of Choji himself. She still cannot defeat Shinki. Not only does Shinki have that sand, but he can use it in a number of different ways, and he actually manages to fight fire with fire. When Chocho makes her fists really large, he's able to create these massive sand fists, which are just a little bit bigger than hers, which gives him the edge in the battle. And throughout the entire episode, he's constantly looking down on her, trying to get under her skin and basically get inside her head, and it seems to work a little bit. Even with Choji and Karui just sort of cheering on their daughter, she still manages to not be able to come out on top. But I do love that she uses the human boulder technique, which is always really fun to watch, and you almost want to see her succeed at first. Like, oh my gosh, she might actually do it. She started like rolling towards Shinki, he's stopping her with his massive sand arms, and his feet actually start to get planted into the friggin' pavement. It's at this point that he gets this really big grin on his face, like he's actually having a very good time here, and he manages to defeat her. It's a bittersweet moment, but I really loved it, and I love how they expanded on it by not only including Chojo and Shinki, but Choji and her mother Karui as well. I love seeing more of that family unit, and it's really, really fun. Especially how at the end of the battle, Chocho doesn't really remark about the fact that she was defeated, just that her opponent was kind of handsome, much to the shock of Choji, of course, which is really funny. He just goes into immediate dad mode in that moment. I also love how they're already building up the battle between Shinki and Mitsuki. I love that Shinki realizes that Mitsuki's really freaking powerful, maybe one of the most powerful people in Konoha currently, and he doesn't want him to hold back in their battle. Now again, this is a fight that never appeared in the movie version, and this is their chance to finally do something incredibly unique like they did with Chocho and Shinki, and frankly, I think it's one of the hypest things about this Chunin exam arc thus far. So, what's the rundown on this episode right here? Very solid episode, if only for the fact that a lot of the material in this episode was brand new, and it was also done competently with good animation and good artwork. That and the fact that they're actually building upon the character of Shinki, who has little to no development in the movie or manga version of Boruto. We get to learn that apparently when he was a young child, very much like Gaara, he didn't have full control over his power, and there's a scene with him in the middle of the sand village causing a massive storm. This is when Shinki creates these like very sharp sand-like objects which end up getting embedded in Gaara, and his only response is to hug this child and to try to help him rein in his power. Basically, Gaara sees a lot of himself in Shinki, especially in the personality and the power department, and he feels that he might be able to rein this guy in and make him the next generation Gaara, which I do think is really cool because let's face it, Shinki looks all sorts of awesome. I love the look of his black sand, and I love that he can do so many unique things with it. His battle against Chocho was a pleasant surprise and easily my favorite thing about this episode right here. That and production value-wise, this is a pretty decent looking episode. Again, taking a lot of the animation cues and moments from the movie, but also expanding upon them and doing their very own thing. Really, this was a solid addition to the series right here, and that's why I'm going to give this episode, that's right, a 5 out of 5. It might not have been a perfect episode in some ways, but honestly, as far as new material goes, this one was good. As someone who's actually seen the movie and read the manga, I was surprised by the events of this episode. I still had a feeling Chocho was going to lose, but at least I finally got to see how that happened, and it made me enjoy her character just a little bit more, as well as Shinki all at the same time. Even the Boruto Shikadai stuff really worked in this episode. The motivation for him actually having to use those gauntlets makes a little more sense in the anime version as opposed to the movie version. Really, despite the fact that the movie just looks so amazing in terms of the artwork and animation, I have to admit the anime is doing a much better job with the story, expanding on the characters, and making us actually care about them. So yeah, I liked this episode, but I want to hear from you guys. Make sure to tell me what you thought about this episode in the comments section below, and what you hope to see from the rest of Boruto Naruto Next Generations. So thank you guys for watching this review. I'll see you guys next time, and as always, stay down, baby.